Welcome, everybody, to this panel. We're really excited that you're all interested in hearing about South Asia. We were a bit worried that we'd have to get event staff to sit here, so thank you for staying back and thank you for coming here. I don't know if you want to be far away, it's okay, but if you want to come close, we promise to not be too scary. But before we jump in, I thought it would be useful for us just to get a sense of who you are in the audience so we can speak to the perspectives that are most valuable for each of you. How many of you are entrepreneurs, if you could raise your hand? Great. Investors? Government?
Still some.
Academics? Other? Other? Okay. Okay, great. So now you all know what we're in for. So I thought I'd introduce myself. My name is Neera Nandi. I'm one of the co-founders of an organization, nonprofit called Dasra, and we've been working in India for 17 years. And so just have had the opportunity to see a lot of things change and emerge in the region. And so just thought it would be valuable for me to be able to guide some of the conversation here. In terms of what Dasra is, we're actually a foundation, and we work with philanthropists and funders and educating them with our research on where they can give and how they can be more strategic, and then connecting it to nonprofits and providing them management capacity building and helping them scale. And you have a whole range of folks on the panel being able to speak to different regions from both an investor side as well as from an ecosystem side, as Jahan will speak about. But I thought we'd open up with something a bit different and ask the panelists if they were to describe the entrepreneur ecosystem in their country and region, what animal would best describe this and why? And then just to speak a bit, and we're going to start with Vineet, and just speak a bit to their journey and their organization through that lens.
Okay, so coming from India, we are taught to memorize everything. So for the last 1 hour, I've been trying to memorize the animal that the entrepreneur and the entrepreneurial ecosystem that I represent. So I finally came and discovered chimpanzee comes pretty close. Not very human, but pretty close to human. The part of the human element that the chimpanzee will have to drop to represent the entrepreneur that I'm looking at is the greed part. Most of the greed goes out. Part of the reason is because I'm actually looking at entrepreneurs who are working with low income and poor people, and to actually build a business which essentially is either reducing vulnerability or generating livelihoods for these people while making money. Important thing is you have to balance the aspect of greed. So chimpanzee does a good job not being human and yet human, pretty close to it. Do you want me to talk about?
Yeah.
So I actually started in 2001, started a company, a fund called Avishkar and a company called IntelliCap. My belief was that if you look at the world from the eyes of the poor people, they actually are not looking at energy solutions or health solutions or education. They want everything done for them. Most of the entrepreneurs in the world is looking at them from their perspective, largely macro. So there is an energy solution, and if we do everything in energy, then poverty will go away. So we chose to actually focus from the challenge, which is actually fairly broad, is solve every problem of the poor. We realized very quickly that it's not possible for us to solve these problems. So the best thing you can do is to find those who are trying to solve them. Entrepreneurs were playing a fairly significant role. And therefore, what we do is actually provide everything that an entrepreneur needs to be successful. So between Avishkar and IntelliCap, the other company that I founded, we provide all sorts of capital from $100 to $15, $20 million to entrepreneurs. So if you are a poor entrepreneur selling vegetables and you need $100, we have a microfinance institution that does it. And if you are a sophisticated entrepreneur looking at $10 million, we provide that as well within the group. We manage around $450 million in assets across Avishkar and IntelliCap. And then we also try to build an ecosystem wherein we help government, other agencies, as well as private and public sector to engage and understand these new kinds of enterprises, because capital can only take you that far. An ecosystem that's thriving and is important to basically build enterprises that would not only create scale, attract capital, but solve these problems. So I'll stop here.
Great, thank you. Jahan.
So I've been debating about the animal, Neera. And I think can it be a cross between two animals?
Yes, it
So I was thinking a cross between a dog and a tiger. And the reason I say that is because most of the entrepreneurs that I've come across in Pakistan right now in our entrepreneurship ecosystem are fiercely aggressive about getting to where they want to go. And so the speed of a tiger is what I was thinking about. But a dog, because they're very supportive of each other, they're very staid, they're loyal. So I thought that cross between those two animals made sense to me. Otherwise, I was thinking from Muhammad Ali's perspective of floating like a butterfly and stinging like a bee, but no. Anyway, so my journey and what we're doing, I'm wearing two hats. I represent the Pakistan IT Association, PASHA, and PASHA has a project which is a technology incubator called the Nest.io, which was started about 16, 17 months ago. So although the Nest is pretty new, PASHA for the last 7 or 8 years has been supporting the startup ecosystem in Pakistan through various events that we have managed to have to see what exists as far as the young people who are studying tech and business is concerned, and then trying to support them and encourage them to start new businesses. You know that Pakistan is a country of 200 million people, a lot of them young people, about 60–70% of them being young people. So there are never going to be enough jobs. And so to encourage them to start tech businesses means not a lot of capital to begin with, and there is a whole lot of talent. So the Nest is my pet project right now. And what we've done over the last 16 months, we've had 3 cohorts go through this space, about 61 startups, most of them doing extremely well up until now. And I think they seem to have, you know, the traditional outlook of 98% of entrepreneurs are bound to fail. Well, I haven't seen that yet, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. They are doing well, and I hope that they will scale and do much better, and some of them will go global. A percentage of them have already raised a seed capital, but none of them have gone to the stage where they've gone to Series A. But the whole IT ecosystem, there have been entrepreneurs within Pakistan who have come and settled in the valley, raised money here. A few of them are in the audience today. There are some that have raised capital within Pakistan and from within the region, whether it's the Middle East, Malaysia, some from Europe and the US. So it's all beginning to happen. The last 3 years have been extremely good for Pakistan, and I think that we are now accelerating, and you'll hear a lot more about what's happening there.
Great, thanks. Anis, yeah.
I'm Anis Uzman. I will consider the entrepreneur as a bird because I think even in my personal life, sky is the limit, and I think you guys can do so much more being a bird. I started Phenox Venture Capital, a venture capital firm in 2011, 5 years ago. I started this fund from zero, so I am an entrepreneur at the same time I'm an investor. When I started, I had $0 and I had to raise the money. It was such a difficult task, and that's how I relate to you. I started with one fund. I convinced a person from Eastern Europe, and I started the fund, and today I have $1.5 billion committed to run the fund. We have 13 different funds between a size of $20 to $200 million. We have also invested all around the world. So we are based in Silicon Valley here. Half of our investment are still in Silicon Valley. But we also invest in many other countries. We have a presence in 14 different countries today. So my relationship with South Asia is that obviously I'm from the descent of Bangladesh. And also we have opened a $200 million fund just targeted towards the Bangladeshi startups. In the last 1 year, we have invested in 5+ companies in Bangladesh. We are also in the process of opening up a new fund for India because I feel that there's another region that we want to invest in. All of our funds are pretty open. We are a little bit technology focused, so we try to invest in technology companies like artificial intelligence, robotics, AR, VR, big data, cloud, and fintech technologies. I feel that the sky is the limit for all of you entrepreneurs, and I think this is a good platform for us to connect with you. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, Samir, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not very good at animal analogies, but let me try. I would describe, I invest in India and I've been investing in early stage for a long time, and the last 5 years in later stage companies predominantly. I would describe the Indian entrepreneurial ecosystem a bit like a rhinoceros. And the reason I picked that animal is to succeed in India as an entrepreneur, you have to be very tough. It's a very difficult operating environment. You've got lots of competition. You've got changing set of rules. You've got venture funds coming in and out of the country. So you really have to be very tough to succeed. And the entrepreneurs that do really well, but it's not an easy environment. In terms of my own journey, I started a venture fund in 2000 focused on Silicon Valley, Bangalore companies called Westbridge, and did that for about 6 years with my partners. We raised a series of 2 funds. We backed about 100 different companies in the cross-border space. And subsequent to that, we merged our firm with Sequoia Capital, and we brought Sequoia Capital to India and formed Sequoia India. Did that for 5 years, and then spun out with my partners again in 2011 and restarted our old firm Westbridge with a very different focus. And we focus today on high-quality, mid-sized Indian businesses and taking large equity stakes with a very long-term view.
And just to build on that, Vineet, do you agree with what Samir is saying in terms of the Indian context, it being a rhinoceros, being tough? Is it difficult to maneuver? Have you seen it change over the years?
Well, I think between 2001 and 2016, things have been very up and down. So if you go back and look at the last 15, 16 years, if you are an Indian entrepreneur, there were large opportunities. There was fairly stressful times as well. And at the same time, there was inflow of capital. And so the opportunities, the size of the country is so large, there are big opportunities. And in some sense, what Samir is trying to say is that if you do not have that perseverance to last long term, if you do not believe in building a very scalable business, then India is a very difficult market to survive. Because if you're trying to actually build a small business and just want to be contented with that, then in that kind of a country where scale is everything and creating value, and again, the margins are always under question. So if you're building a certain small business, and are not looking at scale, then you can actually be pushed around pretty quickly. And therefore, the rhinoceros, thick skin, an ability to actually run hard, even though it looks very bulky. So you have to be swift, at the same time strong and big. And of course, we have seen a fairly significant changes in the way regulations have moved as well. So you need to be very nimble. And rhinoceros, despite its bulk, has actually been quite nimble animal. So.
Do you think that's any different than in Bangladesh or Pakistan? It feels like perseverance feels like it's something that
I think that perseverance is something that all entrepreneurs, wherever in the world they may be, need to have as part of their character, because they will be told, and we heard on the video that we've been watching for the last 3 days, that many more people say no to you and try and tell you that it cannot be done. But the perseverance, the belief that what you're doing actually can be done is very important. And yes, if you have to scale, if you have to grow to the level that most entrepreneurs want their companies to grow, then you've got to be in it for the long term. And I think most entrepreneurs are. They don't lose heart that quickly. I've seen them, they struggle, they take a lot from mentors, from investors, and yet they seem to be okay.
And do any of you see that time before they're able to raise more formal money or raise around being longer in the Southeast Asia region than it is in Silicon Valley? It would also be useful to hear your perspective, Enox, on.
Yeah, it is difficult in that part of the world to actually raise capital, because I think there is not much capital. The venture capital concept is a very new concept altogether in some sense in many of the areas, right? Even in India, I'm sure that Bangalore and Delhi and Mumbai sees the light of it. But if you go to the countryside, other states, I'm sure that you feel the same problem, right? In Bangladesh, you'll be surprised to know that we are one of the very few venture capitals who are playing a role, right? And we all obviously bump into a lot of different types of situations, from regulations to the government restrictions to unfamiliarity with this space. A lot of people still, as Samir and Vineet was mentioning, still consider business as a small business rather than a venture business. So those are some of the lack of knowledge or educational problem that we see as we
You know, I would like to add something to that. I get a feel that although investors and the general, you know, everybody tells entrepreneurs that you need to be risk averse to become entrepreneurs. Very often I feel that investors are very risk averse in certain situations, and they should look long term with a long view at countries that are going to have businesses. I mean, countries like Pakistan, where we don't have that much venture capital coming in and people feel it's a risky market, but hey, that's what's going to in the long run turn out entrepreneurs and turn out businesses that are going to be amazing. Because look at the population locally and look at the talent and the young people locally. I find that investors need to take more.
I disagree with you.
I said that because I knew there are 3 VCs sitting on this panel.
You see, we are there to do a business. We are not volunteers, okay? So the money that we invest, it's not our own money.
Yeah.
We are getting the money from investors who actually expect a return. It's a business at the end of the day. So if you are not the #1 company, if you're not the best entrepreneur, if you are not the person who will not break in any situation, you are not going to get my money. And you might be the best possible kid in the market, but it really does not matter to me. At the end of the day, it's the business, and we help you grow the business, also give you the money. So one of the concepts I'm sure that Samir and Vineet and you will all relate to is that it's about smart money. When I pick you as my portfolio company, you are not only get capital, you are going to get my time.
Yeah,
and
sure.
trust me, that time is going to be a lot more valuable to you than the capital you get from me.
But I think the challenge, and it's interesting, Samir and Vineet, it would be great to hear your perspective. There is a complaint that you guys all chase the same stuff, and are you really taking risk, and what is the risk profile, and you know, has that changed over time?
Yeah, no, let's actually be very clear. The moment you actually take the fiduciary responsibility of taking somebody else's money, you need to be careful. Now, the problem is how careful you want to be. And this actually is where there is a spectrum of investors. Silicon Valley is unique and different, that people have actually put in very large amount of money in paradigm shifting innovations that nobody knew would ever make money.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they have been able to scale businesses beyond. I genuinely believe in countries like India, Bangladesh, and others, our ability to actually take those kinds of gambles is fairly limited. We are still learning, and we are still trying to build our heart to reach that stage. Part of it is because we do not have the kind of supply of capital that you see in Silicon Valley. I'll take my own examples. I've made 50 odd investments. I'm the first investor in every company. 65% of my companies actually had 0 revenue when I invested. And most of these companies are not in Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore. Now that makes me a very high degree of risk-taking investor.
Yeah.
Sometimes my investors actually think that I'm going overboard. A large number of people who are basically coming from mainstream pension funds find my model ridiculous because it's too high risk. And even though we are actually a case study, probably the only Asian fund which is a case study in Stanford Business School. Avishkar is a case study here. We have 3 case studies which is taught in the Stanford Business School, for the reason that we have a 28% failure rate despite being the first investor in 50 companies. Now there lies actually a tale. The challenge is that I am not probably taking enough risk that I am losing 70% of the companies and building companies that are going to give 100x returns to me. I am actually giving a 3x, I'm a 3x return investor, which essentially means the risk that I am taking are execution risks, not necessarily behavioral change risk that Facebook took, or paradigm shifting innovations that could actually give you 1,000,000 times returns than what you invested. That also relates to where the ecosystem is. The ecosystem in India actually allows me to make those investments and yet generate 20% dollar returns, which is not a bad performance even by Silicon Valley standards. So some of it is actually an opportunity that exists in these countries. But if you will continue to use only Silicon Valley lenses to invest in India or Bangladesh or Pakistan, then you will probably be missing a lot of these opportunities. And I would actually want Samir, who used the Silicon Valley paradigm, but one of the reasons probably he split, and I think you are the best person to give that analogy, is because the businesses in India are very different from the businesses that are emerging here. Samir, why not?
No, for sure. Thank you for that nice segue. Yeah, I would say a few things. I'd say, look, Silicon Valley is really unique in the world in terms of raising money. There's no place, forget even in India or Asia or wherever, there's no place in America where you have this kind of confluence of capital providers, networks. This place is just at a different level. But I would say in India, what I've observed is it's pretty stunning the way it's changed. I mean, I remember when we had done our first venture deal in India in 2001, we literally explained to the lawyer what a liquidation preference is. That means that investor gets his money out first. And we had to train the lawyers in India to do that. And today there's, 25 venture funds, over $1 billion a year invest in early stage, a couple of hundred Series A's every year. So you've definitely seen a big thickening of the ecosystem in India, and I think that'll continue. One of the challenges now is that there was a lot of overfunding of tech, perhaps globally, certainly in India, the last 3 years with late-stage valuations going through the roof. Now there's a cold chill coming through the system. Everybody's a little nervous. So money's pulling back from late stage, but even from early stage, less Series A's and so forth. But I think there's definitely a progressive improvement because you see a lot of local firms now, a lot of local general partners, and there definitely is some of the herd mentality type things I think you were raising, where, for example, I think in the last 2 years there were 7 food tech companies, food delivery companies founded in India that were funded with venture money, and maybe only 1 or 2 will survive. But I think that's also okay. That's sort of a healthy capitalist system, and not everyone wins in capitalism. It's a sort of healthy ecosystem.
One important point was the kind of investments you made in Silicon Valley while you were part of Sequoia, and the kind of investments Sequoia India actually made in India were very different. Why? Yeah, true, Vineet. No, great question. So I think, Vineet's very astute to ask that. So I think one thing we've definitely seen is that in every country, the venture system should be a little bit different because ultimately entrepreneurs in each geography solve that local country's problems. And maybe in the US we're so evolved that the only thing left to solve now is apps. I don't know, I'm being a little facetious here, but in India, our problems are so basic and so many that it frankly has nothing to do with technology. So many of the startups we funded, Vineet knows one fantastic company very well, a microfinance company we funded early on, are so different from the problems here in Silicon Valley because we have a huge number of poor people in India, because we have one of our companies that just went public in December in India, very successful IPO, Dr. Lal Path Labs, is India's leading healthcare diagnostics chain. It's a venture investment we made maybe 9 years ago. And if you look at a company like that today, no venture fund here would really be funding traditional healthcare diagnostics companies. So you see that the needs in India are very different. And so the venture industry in India, sometimes what it does is it just apes Silicon Valley. But that's very dangerous because I think as a fund, you really have to think about what are the companies that make sense for India, given India's problems, India's needs. And some of them are high tech, but many of them are sort of more basic non-tech industries, which can make tremendous amounts of money. A good example in the US would be if you look at Walmart. It's been a fantastically successful company, but it's a retailer company. There's no tech, but it's founded 30 years ago. So we believe in India today there are many companies that get founded. They're going to create tremendous wealth for the entrepreneurs, for the investors, but are not necessarily tech. They're sort of more basic businesses because a lot of that is missing today in the ecosystem.
Do you see that similar in Pakistan and Bangladesh? Go ahead.
So as a global investor, we invest mainly in Silicon Valley, and obviously, as you all know, that it's all about AI now. I invested in 6 AI companies in the last 3 months. And one of my latest investment was in a company which was feeling and emotion detection company called Affectiva. We laid a $14 million round into that company. That's like more of Silicon Valley's of MIT companies, right, and Stanford companies. But when we are going to the other regions, right, as we go, we also invest heavily in Japan. Last year itself, we invested close to $24 million in Japan market. And many of these markets are in different spaces, like say e-commerce to consumer to, they're still getting ramped up with the Yelp of the world, right, the review sites. If I'm going to Bangladesh all the way, right, the investments, as you mentioned, are very basic stage, right? They are mostly, they're building the Kayak, Google, and eBay of replica of the countries. And in each region we go, we see that. And obviously we cannot follow the same Silicon Valley mentality that, I want an AI company from Bangladesh. I'm stupid if I do that, right? So yes, we are adapting to that, and we're seeing that those countries are still catching up. But one of the expectations I have, as I was discussing with the India government, that we should open a fund for India, I was telling them that IITs, for example, are the best engineering institutions in the world. And one of the things I was telling to the government that we should expect more technology companies from India, because the talent is there, the technology is there. Even in Bangladesh, there is a university called BUET, which is kind of like similar to IIT. We can expect more technology companies from there, because AI is not hardware, it's software at the end of the day. So that's another discussion, I'm sure, but that's what my expectation
And
would
do you,
be.
Jahan, do you agree with Anis saying that it might need to take this linear approach? Is it not possible that there can be entrepreneurs who very well may jump to the more sophisticated, as you're saying, potentially?
So I think any assumptions that we make will be shot down by the entrepreneurs that exist. So there are, for instance, in Pakistan, there are e-commerce startups that have come up. There has been a $60 million investment into Rocket Internet, which is running 4 or 5 startups in Pakistan. There are people that are working at the cutting edge and targeting the global market. So I don't think I would make any assumptions. Yes, there are assumptions to be made. There is a local market. So as Samir was saying, there are about 200 million people in Pakistan. So there will be solutions to local problems, whether it's social enterprises or whether it's technology solutions to make people's jobs easier, their lives easier. There will be, and there are right now, e-government type projects that will make citizen services possible. So there are all sorts of things happening, but then there are, at the cutting edge, as you said, there are people working in the virtual reality space and in the augmented reality space, as well as AI and data analytics. So I think because there are a lot of people, young people who came to the US or went to Europe and studied there and have now gone back and started companies there, the knowledge base exists. And then there are IIT type institutes that have opened up in Pakistan as well, a lot of good engineering colleges. So the talent is there, and then the knowledge and the direction comes from these people who come back from the Silicon Valley and other places who are leading this initiative. So I think you can expect anything to come out of anywhere. Who expected Skype to come out from where it did? So you would have thought it would come out of Silicon Valley, right? So I think people will be surprised, and I won't, because I see it around me all the time, the talent and the discussions and the kind of projects that they want to work on, the kind of startups that are starting to emerge, the passion, the drive. I think it will happen. It's just that, and you'd need very little money to start with in Pakistan, because it's a place, in Silicon Valley you might need a lot of dollars to start a company, but there they bootstrap, and they need very little angel investment in order to get it to a stage where the proof of concept is achieved, and then they scale. So I think it's only a question of time.
Yeah, so you're nodding, Samir. Can you speak a bit to whether you agree with that bit of bootstrapping ability to get started on a lower cost, but also to add in, we've heard a lot in different conversations across that Silicon Valley is really great and it's so vibrant and there's so much funding and there's mentorship and it's like, a Xanadu of sorts for entrepreneurs, and it seems all very rosy. And so there's also this push for, can you create this sort of fantasy land and make it a reality for, in India, can it exist? Can it exist in this region? So if you can speak a bit to, is there a way to create that? Do we even need to be creating that? And also hear from you guys.
Yeah, just to pick up on what Jahan was saying, one thing we're seeing is a link between entrepreneurs here and in India, like here and in Pakistan similarly. And that's really helping recreate Silicon Valley in India. So I'll give you an example. We are this week now, probably Monday, going to fund a $10 million investment in a SaaS company, software as a service company based in Noida and a little bit of a US front end. We're making that investment. There were a bunch of angel investors before us, and 2 of those angel investors are guys here, well-known guys based here in Silicon Valley, who are Indians, who've invested in the company personally and are helping the company. So we're seeing a big growth of sort of the success of the diaspora here, putting money back to Indian companies, and not just the money, but all the help that comes with it, the Rolodex. How do I hire someone in the US? How do I target customers? How do I raise from VCs? All these kinds of things that a young entrepreneur doesn't know how to do when they start out, they pick up from this money and contacts, and that's accelerating dramatically. So we're seeing a lot of that activity of Indians here that have made money doing angel investments in India, and that's helping bring the ecosystem up, that network, Rolodex knowledge, you know.
Vineet, any advice on do we need one?
I think the challenge really is that whose problem is Silicon Valley solving? And if you are actually 1.3 billion people in that country, your problems are unique. And those unique problems, so there is this level of people, and I'll actually just give some numbers to you. India's India's consumption right now, if I actually look at the entire pyramid, this roughly, I think we are consuming close to $1 trillion, $700 billion, something like that. And around $200 billion of that consumption, $250 billion of consumption is coming from the bottom of the pyramid. Now, those guys are not going to benefit from the artificial intelligence kind of companies. The challenge is, if you really want to actually look at the entire population, and ultimately the challenge that you have in San Francisco right now is there are a lot of people on the roads outside. And this challenge is not, you're not going to run away from this challenge just because you're going to create artificial intelligence. In India, we are facing that reality on a daily basis. We have a Maoist problem, we have all kinds of problems. China is facing the same kind of challenges. If you want to build a more equitable society, a society that actually allows people of different size, shapes to live together, then you have to look beyond just trying to make money. And that really is the challenge this society is going to fight. The way the Britain exits from Europe has taken place is also actually a big signature to where we are heading. And therefore, probably everybody with capital, everybody sitting in this place, students who are actually studying here might have to think about their future in a very different context. The real challenge that we are facing is not necessarily what is it and how do you make more money. The real challenge we are facing is, do we understand what problems we are solving, and would you be there tomorrow to actually play a role? It applies to every person sitting here. We are venture capitalists, but we are bringing somebody else's money. If that money is actually tomorrow taken away, tomorrow you suddenly have a revolution. It happened in places where you had very autocratic rulers. It can happen in democracies far easier and better. We suddenly saw a protest outside today when the president was here. I think those challenges exist, and we need to start addressing them. If we don't, then you will have a challenge right in Silicon Valley, as we will have in India and China and Pakistan and Bangladesh. So to me, I think the more important question to everybody with capital is, are we using the capital for right problems? And can we create value while making a more equitable society? That responsibility exists. We cannot run away from it.
So we're just going to take some time to ask questions from all of you to our panelists, and then we'll bring it back towards the end. So if I have some of my mic folks, and we can take some questions. Yes?
Cheers.
Way in the back. And if you can keep it to a question,
Okay,
please.
so this question is actually for Jahan. Jahan, my name is Asha Jadeja. I'm based here in Silicon Valley, and I'm from India. And I just made my first 2 investments in Pakistani companies, and I think one of them is yours, from Nest.io. It's called Club Internet.
No, it's not from Nest.io, but thank you for investing. I think you've made the right decision.
So, but you know, one of the things that I'm not, I actually want to get a little bit more sort of, comfortable with the angel network in Lahore. That's where my friends are actually. And how do I do that? I mean, what would you recommend would be sort of a good way to get to sort of, because I think if some of us from the Valley are investing there, it'll encourage and enliven the local angel network.
So
also.
let's connect, and I will, if you can email me, I'll send you the name of all the angel investors who are investing now. Most of them are Pakistani Americans who've moved back after being in the Valley. Either they've studied here, they've worked here, and then gone back, and now they are investing in the tech sector. So I'll connect you with them, and the size of those investors is increasing, and many of them are investing together. So they're creating venture funds together and sharing the risk. So just meet with me after this panel, and I'll connect you with anybody that either in Lahore, in Karachi, Islamabad, they are now all investing together.
Great, thank you. We have a question here.
it's not working. Yeah, yeah.
Hi, I'm Mubarak Siddiqui. I'm from Pakistan. I'm a lawyer in Pakistan. I work primarily with startups. My question is with the panel generally. As investors, I mean, I was listening to Travis Kalanick yesterday, and he spoke about innovation, an essential requirement for innovation being the gap between perception and reality. So, I mean, as investors, especially when you're looking at an emerging market, and given most due to politics in general, most emerging markets are painted with perception. What do you guys do to find reality in that, and how do you guys battle that perception or clear that perception in order to find good investment deals in those markets?
Do you want to go ahead first? Yeah, go ahead. Alex.
So when I also do a lot of seed investment, and I've invested in 25 plus seed investments made. So when I'm making a seed investment, I'm sure that Vineet has more experience in this area than me, but we look at you basically and see that whether you have the personality to run the company, because at the seed stage you have nothing to see. We have no track record. You might not even have a prototype. All you have is an idea. And so we see you. So there are two qualities that we actually look into you as we talk with you. We try to judge with our experience because we are older than you, most probably. So the first thing that we see is whether you are a flexible person, right? So we run different ideas by you, and you see that how you take it, right? How you catch the ball. And if we see that you are sticking to your idea and you're not moving around, then most probably you are out. Okay? The second thing is that how determined you are, how hungry you are. Because if you're not hungry and you're just trying out another idea as another game that you're playing, most probably will not get the funding or capital.
But my question was more pertaining on a macro level. What do you look at in an ecosystem before entering into that market?
So ecosystem-wise, as you see, like as we go to your country or any other country, we have to understand the market a little bit. So we actually do a little bit of localization study anytime we go to a new country. And we always have a local partner who also understands the market, right? So we understand as we go to South Asia, there is risk. And the risk is bigger risk than most probably you will have in Silicon Valley, most probably in terms of like the infrastructure and everything else. So we're going with the risk, but at the same time, we find that there are people who are making companies that are going to be breakthrough companies. And there are. I have invested in 5+ companies in Bangladesh, and those are some of the best companies that I've invested in. And I actually rank them equally with the companies that I invest in Silicon Valley.
Do you guys have anything to add about perception versus
I would just add one more thing to the good points you made, which is that one of the most challenging things in emerging markets is that they go through, as you alluded to, some big up and down cycles. So like India in 2003, it was almost impossible to raise money. Or India in 2011, India 2007, as long as you had a heartbeat, people will give you money. So you go through these up and down cycles, and maybe the last 2 years was an up cycle, and maybe now entering a bit of a down cycle. So I think managing the cycles becomes incredibly important. And as an entrepreneur or as a VC, it's really when your marketing skills get tested, because it's when times are down that it's tough as an entrepreneur to convince a VC to risk his career on you and give you their money. And as a VC, when you're raising money from limited partners, it's tough for you to convince them to risk their career and put money behind you. So it's those times that are testing. And I think if the key is really to if you have conviction in what you're doing, whether you're an entrepreneur or VC, to express that conviction to investors and give them the confidence to invest in tough moments. But it's much tougher than here because we go through cycles in the valley, but the cycles in emerging markets are just, the highs are higher and the lows are lower. So it makes it tougher to manage.
Yeah, Shazia, go ahead, and then I'll come to you.
Hi, my name is Shazia Khan. I am the co-founder and executive director of a company called Eco Energy Finance. For the last 7 years, we've been conducting extensive market research and delivering off-grid solar solutions to communities who live off the electric grid in rural Pakistani areas. We've got no trouble when it comes to customer acquisition, retention, or repayment. The trouble that we're having is unlocking financing. And primarily, we're looking to unlock local financing because Pakistan, like many other countries in South Asia, is very conservative when it comes to returns that they allow foreign investors to be able to, obtain from their investments. So the challenge that we're having is coming up with some sort of a facility, a loan guarantee program, a revolving credit fund, something so that we can induce local Pakistani banks to unlock the financing that we need. Do you have any recommendations for an entrepreneur like me who's been very committed and dedicated for the last 10 years of my life to this,
Jahan,
to
do you
making
wanna-
sure that people have energy access?
Jahan, do you want to go ahead and give some suggestions? Vineet, do you want to talk about some guarantee structures that may be in India?
I mean, there are lots of things one can talk about, but you have a pretty unique problem, and you can look to solve it in many different ways. I do not know for what purpose do you need equity, for what purpose do you need money. Is it actually to finance the projects? Is it for something else? Is it to... Yeah. So I think, and probably you don't have assets to collateralize, so therefore nobody is going to actually lend to you, and therefore you need some sort of a guarantee that would allow lending to happen. Now this actually is something which has been resolved actually in financial services for a very long period of time. A lot of institutions do it. I think you have to identify some of those international institutions like DFIs, Development Finance Institutions, KFW, DEG, IFC, FMO. All of them actually do those kinds of guarantees, or you can actually go to city foundations, a lot of foundations. Since you are in energy, you are in a pretty hot sector, Rockefeller would be a good one. I would recommend to reach out to. They have a very large program going in India. So my suggestion would be actually to look at foundations. What you are doing is actually very needed, but at the same time probably is not as commercial. And you might need to actually create some sort of partnership which is hybrid commercially, and not necessarily completely commercial. Look for foundations. That's the best bet for you.
Go ahead. Yeah, in the front row.
Hello, I'm Arif Nizami from Bangladesh, and we run an innovation lab for 3 years, and we're working with entrepreneurs locally. So I have two questions, very short. One is, I'll echo with you what happened in UK yesterday, and maybe that's also going to happen maybe in US as well, because the elections are coming up, and many other parts of the world. So the markets are closing down for global entrepreneurs and global immigrants and other people. So as the entrepreneurship thing is now bubbling up, and people from South Asia or other countries are planning to come here and build their companies, and markets are right now are closing up. So that's a big issue, right? For maybe who is starting up today or yesterday, who has started up, they're going to face so many problems because if the US government got changed and other things. So that's one. And second one is, I was observing China's economy for a few days. I've been to China before coming.
Ask your question.
Yeah, so the question is, China has closed down all these borders for the companies from outside, from foreign companies. There's no Google, there's no Facebook. That's why their companies
okay, so therefore,
QQ and Didi has come up very good. But our South Asian government are so much open to those companies. So when our local startups are creating all the backgrounds thing and making the market.
I need you to get to the question.
Okay, so what do you think on the China's strategy and the strategy of other
Southeast Asia? There's a whole other panel on that. But do you want to ask about how?
I think China, none of us are experts on China, so we'll leave it out. So that's the short answer. Your first question was probably about, what was it? I actually lost the first question because your second question was so long.
Hello. So as the global market is closing down because all the politics.
So I think every opportunity there is a second part. The other side is risk. So that's exactly what we do. So what you do is the closing down of the market might actually be a new opportunity somewhere. You have to rethink it. That's it. As an entrepreneur, your job is to keep looking for new opportunities. Probably the closing of market is opening some new opportunity somewhere.
We'll just do the last question and then come back. Yeah.
I just want to ask that as a region, we have a lot of individual organizations working internally. For example, you're working with the government to try to convince them to do good policies. Are we looking as a region to sort of create a governance structure in Southeast Asia? Maybe is that a good idea? To sort of collaborate with each other and our governments to sort of have a general policy that allows leaner or more agile entrepreneurial activities in this region?
Yeah, and thank you. And I'm going to use that question for us to also just add in some of your closing. So if you can just speak to, is there a real opportunity for the region to come together as a collective to sort of help and promote the entrepreneurship space or impact investing or investing? And if you can sort of speak to what you really see as advice or, one key thing that really needs to be overcome to sort of unlock the potential in the region. Why don't we start with you, Anis?
So there is definitely a lot of possibilities for the region, and I'm sure that panels like this actually brings us all together, and I'm sure that governments will take an initiative so that we can actually do this more and discuss more. I want to leave you all with something new and exciting. So I know that there are a lot of entrepreneurs here. So we have actually started an initiative where we are going to bring in every one of you to participate in the first ever Startup World Cup. So we have actually announced it 2 days ago. 22 million people have seen this. So please go to www.startupworldcup.io. And if you are the winner, you're going to receive a $1 million in prize in investment. So we're going to do a lot of regionals in 10 different countries. It happens to be in South Asia, in Bangalore, in India. So if you participate that, you'll be the regional champion. You'll be flown out to San Francisco to fight the final battle, the championship, on March 24th, 2017. So that's the prize for me.
Thank you. Samir?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for cooperation among the countries. Unfortunately, I guess given all the politics of it, it doesn't happen as much as it should. That's a reality of it, but there's definitely a lot of room for cooperation. There should be more. And closing thoughts, I'm very optimistic about entrepreneurship in the region. I think we have a tremendous amount of talent. Things are opening up, and I think next 5-10 years can be pretty amazing.
Jahan?
Yeah, I think collaboration, cooperation in the region has been something that I've been working on for a long time, and I think we need to continue that. I'm very happy to hear from Vineet that he's coming into Pakistan and thinking of investing in Pakistani companies. That's a great sign, and I hope Anis will do the same since he has a very big fund. I think collaboration also, I think what she was suggesting in terms of policies, because very often the entrepreneurship ecosystem is put to a halt or at least slowed down because of, whether it's policies in terms of taxes or in terms of, the way regulation, unnecessary regulation. Those kind of things, if we cooperate on, it's much easier to go to our governments and say, hey, look what those guys are doing, and see that's why their ecosystem is prospering. And if it's from our region, it's easier to convince them than to say, hey, Silicon Valley does it this way. So I think that kind of collaboration will help at policy level. As far as my advice in closing to entrepreneurs, what I have seen, and I work very closely with young people who aspire to be entrepreneurs and who are making a difference both at the social level as well as commercially benefiting not only themselves but the economy, is that don't let anyone tell you that it can't be done. It can be done. Just give it a shot. There are enough people around you. I've seen our community has come together since we opened up the Nest. There's so many people wanting to mentor, to help you, and the best thing that I've seen out of this initiative that we started is that it has become a community. It is a startup community. The 61 startups are about 300 kids, and they've all come together and they want to help each other and make sure that they all prosper. So I think that's the best thing that entrepreneurship has done.
Great. Vineet?
So we've just concluded making investments in Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka in addition to India. My theory is pretty simple. These are countries which have cultural similarities. We speak similar language. We have a similar density of population. These are very high density population countries. We have a similar genetic pool. So the entrepreneurial genetic pool is almost the same. People behave and talk and think similarly. Therefore, the opportunities that have emerged in India can actually be found in Pakistan and Bangladesh and other countries in the region. The challenge therefore, the challenge that I think exists at this point of time is they are at different continents, they are different times continuum. And as the time continuum will change, you would actually start seeing a significant evolution of the ecosystems, and therefore success stories emerging, which will drive. I mean, 1991, we actually had not much in India to talk about in terms of entrepreneurship. The people who were entrepreneurs in 91 became the role models for the entrepreneurship revolution that took place, Infosys founders and others. I think Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and many other of the countries in the region will have to actually go through the same churn. We are probably in 5th year, 7th year, 14th year, 12th year. Ecosystem building is important, but the entrepreneurs who are here from these countries need to realize that if you want to attract capital, you got to show scale. And these are countries with very large populations. So please do not think small time. Even though capital is actually not available for you, if you think big, and I actually always say, in US, even if the company is servicing only New Jersey, it says it's a global company. If you hear most companies in India, they are still actually trying to serve one state, one region, etc. So it's a mental problem, it's less of actually a physical problem. We start thinking globally, and in terms of scale, you might be able to attract capital from very unknown regions. You may not know where it will come from. It sure is there. You have problems galore, and therefore opportunities to make a difference is pretty much there. Ultimately, it's between the ears where the problem lies, not really in the ecosystem or outside.
Great. So on that note, between the ears, we want to leave you with thinking big and encourage you to come to the region. We have big problems to solve. So thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you.